Okay guys, now you should be able to calculate any trig function in the first quadrant. Meaning you should be able to calculate anything here with the angles 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, and pi over 2. What I'm going to show you how to do now is how to calculate the other quadrants. So if you get something similar to sine of 4 pi over 3, how to calculate something like that, okay? So let's go back over here. I'm going to show you the other quadrants first. Okay, so it goes all the way around. And you're going to see a pattern here, okay? This is going to be 5 pi over 6. Okay? If you go in the middle there, it's going to be 3 pi over 4. If you go in the next one here, it's 2 pi over 3. And if you notice, is that every single one of these is one less than the denominator. Yeah? Okay, now there's going to be a pattern you see over here on this side too. This is going to be where the pi over 6 is, the smaller angle, just like that one. And instead of being one less than the denominator, it's going to be one more than the denominator. So where we have a 5 on this one, we're going to have a 6 plus 1, which is going to be 7. So this is 6 minus 1, 4 minus 1, 3 minus 1. These are all going to be plus 1. So in the middle we have all the pi over 4s. Over here we have the pi over 3s. Okay, so this is going to be plus 1. So we got 5 pi over 4 here. Here we got 4 pi over 3. Okay? And this would be pi over 2. It's going to be plus 1, 3 pi over 2. This line here, you guys should already know, it goes from 0 straight across would be 180 degrees, which is pi radians. Okay, let's get this last quadrant here. So this quadrant is minus 1 from the denominator, plus 1 from the denominator, and then we got multiply by 2 and subtract 1. So let me show it to you. The small angle is pi over 6. The middle angle, pi over 4, just like all the other ones. The larger angle, pi over 3. Okay, what you're going to do is it's going to be times 2 minus 1. Times 2 would be 12, minus 1 is 11. So it's going to be 11 pi over 6. This one, times 2 minus 1. So 8 minus 1, 7 pi over 4. This one, times 2, 6, minus 1, 5 pi over 3. Okay, so this quadrant is minus 1. This quadrant is plus 1. This quadrant you can think of as kind of like it's the random number. It's the one that's not minus 1 or plus 1. Or you can say it's 2 times minus 1. Times 2 minus 1. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how to calculate these, okay? So let's just write some of them down. I'm going to get rid of that one. Okay, so we have sine of 5 pi over 6, cosine of 7 pi over 6. Let's do sine of 3 pi over 4. Cosine of, and you know what, let's do some secants and cosecants. Secant of 4 pi over 3. Okay. So first thing is ignore the numerator number, okay? So here we're going to do pi over 6. Here we're going to do pi over 6. Here we're going to do pi over 4. Here we're going to do pi over 3. And then you follow the rules just as before. So you see a sine, square root over 2. You see cosine, square root over 2. You see sine, square root over 2. You see secant, 2 over square root. Yeah? Now focus on this number. Where does it land on your hand? So pi over 6. That's my ring finger. Put it down. How many signs are up? 1. So the answer to that is a half. Next one. Put down the ring finger because it's pi over 6. We're going to ignore the number on the front. Pi over 6. Cosine has 3. Okay, next one. For this one, pi over 4. Sine has 2. Secant, pi over 3 is that one. Secant is the same as cosine, which has 1. And so it's just going to be 2. Okay. Now all we need to do is, all these different quadrants might just be positive or negative, okay? That's the only difference, is that it's going to be positive or negative. That's the exact same answer, okay? So if you guys don't know, I'm going to erase these so I can put some letters in here. Okay, all things are positive here. Sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, secant, cosecant, all of them are positive here. Okay? Here, the only thing that's positive is sine, things related to sine. Sine and cosecant. Everything else is negative. Here, tangent is the only thing that's positive. Tangent and cotangent, everything else is negative. And the last one, cosine is the only thing that's positive. Cosine and secant. Okay? Now, so you can memorize this, is all students take calculus. This is just going to tell you it's positive and negative. Sines are positive, tangents are positive, cosines are positive. Okay? Everything else is negative in those other ones. Okay, so we're doing 5 pi over 6. That is 1 less than the denominator. 1 less than the denominator, so I know it falls into the second quadrant, where sine is positive. We're dealing with sine, so that's my answer. Just simplify it to 1/2. Okay, this next one, cosine, 7 pi over 6. That's 1 more than the denominator. So that means it must be in the third quadrant, where tangent is positive. Cosine is negative. That's my answer. Okay, 3 pi over 4. That's 1 less than the denominator, meaning it's in the second quadrant. In the second quadrant, sine is positive. So we're going to leave this as positive because we're dealing with sine. Okay, 1 more than the denominator here. That means it's in the third quadrant, where tangents are positive. This is secant, so it must be negative. Okay, there you go. So make sure to first write down square root over 2, or whatever it is you're writing. Next, put down your finger and count however many sines or cosines you have. Last thing you do is check what quadrant you're in and see if that is positive or negative.